This is Hall of Famer Ron Simmons, and you're listening to WGD Weekly with Steve and the Scum.
All right, folks, we are back. Welcome to WGD Weekly with Steve and the Scum. My name is Steve, and with me is the Scum. And Scum, WGD, you know what it stands for. I know what it stands for. It does not stand for World Georgia Dog, nor does it stand for Wicked Good Dinner. What does it stand for, my man? Welcome back.
Well, Steve, it's always a pleasure to be back here on Wrestling's Glory Days Weekly with you, my longtime tag team partner, and it's always a pleasure to be doing business with the top-notch act that is Wrestling's Glory Days over on Facebook, bringing all the fans out there and all our loyal followers. 15,000 strong, the best in old school professional wrestling, all the moments that we all remember so fondly. Just like we get brought here on the program every week from the performers who are actually a part of those moments. This week, Steve, we have two men joining us. I always call us wrestling's most dangerous team. But these guys, hard to argue, at one point might have been wrestling's most popular team, especially with the young girl demographic. And that would be Ricky and Robert, the Rock and Roll Express, are here this week.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. We've never had that duo in studio, so to speak. So it'll be a new exciting adventure for us this week. We're glad you're with us. Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, always going to tell you a good story there. I mean, it's the Rock and Roll Express. They've been up and down the East Coast against the Midnight Express, against all the great heels of the Mid-South, of the Mid-Atlantic, Georgia Championship Wrestling, rocking them bandanas. And we saw them recently, Scum, at WrestleCade, and they're still rocking, man.
Oh, yeah, they're still rocking. Ricky and Robert are both active as heck. 30 years plus of being a tag team. I mean, it says something for their bond and the bond that they have not only between one another, but with the fans nationwide, worldwide. I would suppose you'd say they have been everywhere. The old NWA, like you said, the Mid-South, Memphis, Crockett Promotions, spent a little time with Vince and WWF, Smoky Mountain, you name it. The Rock and Roll Express have been there, and they've been throwing those double drop kicks, and they keep on rocking.
Always rocking, man. That's for sure. Well, you know, we're going to get right to it. We got that tag team this week. Like we said at the beginning of our show, new and improved Steve and the Scum, trying to bring you something cool every week. Of course, this week we got the legendary Rock and Roll Express. Hopefully one day, Scum, they hit the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I'd like to think. I know you and I have discussed that this year being at the Superdome, where they sold as many tickets as anyone back in, the mid-'80s there when they were down in the Mid-South territory. It seemed the Superdome in New Orleans would be a great spot to get them in. I mean, I don't know how many more entries we're going to have this year, but yeah, it would be very cool and very fitting to see the Rock and Roll Express go in this year. If not this year, at some point, I would believe. Again, their record and the popularity they had certainly speaks for itself, and I'm sure the fans in that area, especially the fans that are our age and some of the older fans, would remember them fondly.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's a bevy of teams out there from the 80s that deserve Hall of Fame recognition, and you could say, oh, well, this guy's in and this guy's not, and that's BS. What's done is done, and you can only hope for this year and years to come, but certainly the Rock and Roll Express, the Midnights, a couple other individual performers. I'm really excited this year already as to who's going in. Jake and the Warrior, Paul Bearer, of course, Lita, some great performers going in already. So it's going to be a great Hall of Fame. And again, total pimps for this network, Scum. We get to watch the Hall of Fame induction ceremony unabridged from start to finish from one source, which I really enjoy that. So it's going to be a terrific weekend, WrestleMania weekend. Hopefully we can get together, Steve and the Scum, that weekend and check out all the festivities. But, having the Rock and Roll Express here is really exciting. I want to get to this interview pretty quick, Scum. So I guess unless you have anything else to add, my man, let's get right down to that interview with Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I also hope we can get together for that great Hall of Fame lineup this year at WrestleMania weekend. That'll live on the WWE Network. First time you'll be able to watch the whole thing. Before we get into the interview, though, speaking of Hall of Fame lineups, Ricky Morton of the Rock and Roll Express will be a part of a hell of a lineup up here coming up on Saturday, March 29th at the Clayton Fitness in my hometown of Clayton, North Carolina. Ricky will be on the card as part of the Ivan Koloff Tag Team Tournament, the 6th annual. Obviously, Ivan will be in the house, and we got our guest from last week, Ron Simmons, will be there, the legend Thunderbolt Patterson, as well as Kevin Sullivan, who recently visited the show. Next week's guest, the franchise, Shane Douglas, will be there as well, and during the day, Kevin Sullivan and the franchise will be putting on a seminar and a Q&A from 2 to 4 at Clayton Fitness for the fans to come out, get a chance to meet them up close and personal, just like we're about to meet up close and personal here with Ricky and Robert, Steve.
Absolutely. And don't forget, meet Steve and the Scum there too. Like, we're very, very low on the totem pole when it comes to when you want to go to a wrestling event and meet anybody. But come on over and say hi. Who knows? We may have a prize to give away. Certainly always love to talk classic professional wrestling with any fan. So Scum Nation, sit back and relax. We got Rock and Roll Express right around the corner. We'll be back right after this.
This is Jim Cornette, wrestling legend and all-around nice guy. You are listening to WGD, Wrestling's Glory Days Weekly with Steve and the Scum. I recommend this program highly, especially if you have nothing better to do.
All right, Scum Nation, we are back big time with the Rock and Roll Express. Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson join us tonight at WGD Weekly. Guys, it's an honor to have you here. Thanks for joining us. How's it going tonight?
Man, we're doing pretty good.
What's up, guys? What's up, Scum?
How you doing, man? Honored to have you guys here with us tonight.
Well, thank you, man. We appreciate that very much. I know a lot of people out there. Even I had somebody the other day ask me, says, I heard the Rock and Roll Express broke up. I said, hell, I didn't know we was even going together.
Well, guys, we want to get right down to business. And what we normally do on our show is do a brief timeline of your career, starting from, of course, the very beginning, all the way up to current day. So let's talk about the beginnings of both of your careers. Ricky, you go first. Robert, go ahead after Ricky. Tell us about how you initially got into the sport of professional wrestling, what drew you into the business, how you were trained, and what your initial thoughts were when you first entered the world of professional wrestling.
Well, guys, I grew up in the wrestling business. My dad was a professional wrestler, and he became a referee. And understand me, at the times, my dad worked for different promoters, but during the time of my younger years, he worked for Nick Gillis and then went on to Jerry Jarrett, where my dad pulled the wrestling ring. And that's a real younger age. You know, we put the ring up every night. I follow right in my dad's footsteps in professional wrestling business. You know, but it's like right now I have a son that travels with me everywhere. He's 12 years old, and he knows more about the business than a lot of guys in the business do. So understand me, that's the way it started off for us, for me anyway.
Oh, very good. Robert, you?
I'll tell you, when I came out of my mama's, I think I was ready to rock and roll. You know, I was in a wrestling family, my brother Rick Gibson, myself, and after he got hurt later on, then me and Ricky Morton got together and created a rock and roll.
Very good, very good. Well, again, you each started from different points, obviously, and, you know, eventually you wound up paired up and probably became, if not the most popular, one of the most popular tag teams of all time. I was wondering if you could each go back, you know, Ricky, you can start, Robert, you follow, and what do you recall of when you guys were actually put together, like whose idea was the pairing and the name, and looking back, what were each of your initial thoughts of working with one another?
You know, before Robert and I became partners, I had a couple other partners that I learned a lot from, Ken Lucas and Sonny King, but Ken Lucas, the mainly one. Jerry Lawler, or Robert and I were in Memphis, and Jerry Lawler was, you know, at the time, you know, everybody putting a lot of stuff together. And you got to understand, in those days, the Memphis territory was one of the greatest territories there were. A lot of the top stars in this business came out of Memphis. You know, Jerry Lawler put us together, you know, and then there you had Jimmy Hart there, which everybody knows Jimmy Hart, you know, Jimmy Hart, the Gentries, the rock and roll. You had R&R, Ricky, Robert, Baba, and then finally buddy at Boytown, we put the Rock and Roll Express. I'll never forget the first day we done this. We went to, me, Robert, and Lawler went to a flea market to get out. You know, we had our tights, and we went over there to a flea market, bought a lot of bandanas and feathers, and I never forget our first match. We came back, some fan asked us, I didn't know if y'all were gypsies or Indians, but y'all sure are good.
That is great stuff. Well, Ricky, you were mentioning Tennessee, and I wanted to talk a little bit about your time in Louisiana and Mid-South with Bill Watts and his territory. You guys picked up that memorable program, of course. I think it's still going today, actually, with the Midnight Express and Jim Cornette. So Take us through that memorable program. You battled all the way up and down the East Coast, it seemed, from territory to territory. So give us your thoughts, from your perspective, working with the Midnight Express, your chemistry in the ring, and what were some of your favorite moments working with them?
Guys, this starts back in the Louisiana territory, like you said, with Bill Dundee and Bill Watts brought us in down there. I got to say, and understand me, in this business, and I'm not here to insult anybody's intelligence. At the time, our business was a lot different. A lot of kayfabe. We worked hard. We didn't do the things. And Jimmy Cornette, which you got to understand me, in any circumstance, if you try to beat Jimmy Cornette in a verbal fight, you're going to lose. Jimmy Cornette is the best talker that you could ever imagine for our business. But then you had a tag team of Dennis Condrey and Bobby Eaton. Now, those two fellas were two of the greatest workers in our business. But the chemistry of what he did, it just clicked. You had the Express versus the Express. We did things in Louisiana that never been seen before, which Bill Dundee, as being the booker of the territory, took from Memphis and took down here. Guys, it exploded right from the bat. Like you was talking about the chemistry of the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express. It's the thing of the Expresses meeting.
And all the action.
Yeah, and buddy, it just went on and on. Selling out, going to this, WrestleMania is coming up in the Superdome. Buddy, we wrestled back in the Superdome in 1983 and 84, where we were drawing such some tremendous crowds. We had people even camping out, buying tickets for our shows. Louisiana was a great place where Robert and I really grew together. And it's a lot of people talk about tag team wrestling, and you see today said tag team wrestling is dead. It's not dead. There's nobody out there that knows how to do it like the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express did.
Sure. And anything to add to that, Robert, about working with the Midnights and Cordat?
He pretty much summed it up, man. I'll tell you, just every night we went out there and we busted our butts, 7 days a week, twice on Saturday, twice on Sunday. It was a long, hard road, but we just kept rocking.
Absolutely. Those stand the test of time. And like Ricky was saying, this year's WrestleMania down there in the Superdome, you guys certainly were selling that place out, like you said, years and years gone by. Steve and I have actually talked a few times that before I get on to the next question, if you don't mind us saying, wouldn't be too far of a stretch or too fitting if they maybe added the Rock and Roll Express to that Hall of Fame this year, being that it's down at the Superdome, right?
Well, me and Robert have talked about this several times. It would be a great compliment to us. I think that over all the years and don't believe it or not, we're not trying to be somebody that we're not. We worked hard for what we got. We paved a lot of roads for a lot of guys in this business. It'd be a great appreciation if they did. Who knows? It's not April yet. Okay.
Right. Yeah. No, we had just said that in talking when we knew we had you guys coming up, and being that it was a Superdome, that who we were thinking who would be more fitting. Being all the like you said, the tickets sold and all the matches that you had. It seems to us as fans that you guys would be a perfect fit this year. Just wanted to throw that in there when you brought the Superdome out.
Appreciate it very much.
That's a great compliment, guys. We appreciate that.
Absolutely. Well, we'll keep moving along here and chronologically through your great career. You were just talking the Midnight Express and the Rock and Rolls, and that feud would move all the way from the Mid-South up to the Mid-Atlantic and Jim Crockett Promotions, the Carolinas and the surrounding areas. It's certainly not a far stretch to say that you guys, if not the biggest draw or most loved performers ever up in this area, you're certainly one of them. And it would seem, especially with the female demographic back there in the 80s, I'm sure you guys could speak to that. Could you each maybe give us a memory or a story or a moment or two, maybe when you looked at that popularity you guys had there back in the Carolinas, the Mid-Atlantic, and the mid-80s, where you just took a look and said, wow, this thing's gotten huge, this is crazy?
Well, I knew it was wild when we went to a place called Carowinds in Rock Hill, South Carolina, a big amusement park. And we go in there, and they come to us and says, guys, we appreciate y'all being here, but y'all have got to leave. The whole park is at the exit. Wait for y'all to come out.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you know, and guys, this during the Robert and I were rock stars, and we really didn't know it. You know, like I was saying, the business was different then. We didn't have the contracts and all the stuff that people have now. But, you know, and at the time it was different with you, especially with your promoters and stuff. But when you go in, it's like Robert was saying, it's not only at that, several times, you know, every event we went to, guys, I'm telling you, they did, you know, that we broke attendance records. You know, and that wasn't because of just, it was a lot of us involved. But it was one of the great eras in this business was to be around him at that time. You know, going into arenas that they say that would never be broke, they would come back the next month and break it again. The talent that we had there, you know, with the Russians, my hats off to them. Then, you know, we a Midnight Express run, then the Four Horsemen run. It kept on and on and on and going, especially going into the small towns because, you know, back then you had an A team and a B team. But Robert and I were the leader of the B team, but we sold out everywhere we went. You know, like the small towns, instead of going to the gymnasiums, we had to go on the football fields, and it was the great, you know, man, it's a moment in life that passed us by real quick, but it was something that, and that's what I was saying earlier about paving the roads. You know, a lot of these young guys in the wrestling that came on superstars, that was before any of them broke into business. Get a lot of compliments from them guys.
Certainly, and well-deserved, too. Now, you had mentioned a couple of great teams from that Crockett territory there with the Koloffs, the Russians, and the Four Horsemen. You also had a great run with Manny Fernandez and Rick Rude. Of course, a lot of great teams there. The Road Warriors passed through there, so many others. Given the tag team landscape at the time with so much talent there, were there any teams that you were particularly fond of facing? And were there any teams that you weren't so fond of getting in the ring with for whatever reason?
Dude, you got to understand something about our business. In those days, you know, it's not like it is now. You were not able to step in the ring or be in a territory unless you knew our business. And understand there was a lot of tag teams, a lot of people were different. But I'm going to make an example by saying something like this right here. Some of you underneath workers, you see, they were some of the greatest workers in our business too. You know, I'll give a lot of credit. I'll make an example for like downtown Denny Brown. He was a great worker. So understand me, it wasn't nobody that you didn't want to step in the ring with. At that time in that era, every tag team, everybody that stepped in that ring, had perfectly great workers. They just had different styles. And that's what made Robert and I really good with our chemistry. We adjusted to their style. And that's what made everything click so good. So, no, I didn't have a favorite. They all were great workers to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of good talent back there.
No arguments there. I mean, just the ones that you named on top of, it was a special time, like you said. It was a great era. I mean, for us as fans at the time, there, I don't remember a time in wrestling that could match up to that personally, but you know, I'm sure that both of you feel the same. At this point, we get about halfway through our interview. I always try to get a little bit of a lighter or a funnier story out of the guests. So I'm sure you guys could probably play off one another, with all you've been through together with this. What I'd like to call it is the 3 R's. So I'd like you guys to come up with a story that the two of you could share. Either the R's stand for a rib, a riot, or a road story.
You know, 99.9 of the stories you heard about the Rock and Roll Express, most of them are true. But, you know, it's just different things. And we, you know, when you caught me off guard here, it's a lot of things in the business that we have, you know, we have pulled ribs on people. We, but, you know, and things that just happened in the match. You know, I remember one night that we was in Little Rock, Arkansas, and that's when, at that time, you got to understand that many people have music to go to the ring. And we're in Little Rock, Arkansas, and KISS is playing the next night. And we're in Barton Coliseum, and understand me, guys, it was packed. They had a big stage that was set up for them, and Bill Watts told us to walk out on the stage when they played our music, buddy. They got that, and they cut off every light in the building, and we went up
Here
on
comes
that
the
stage.
spotlight.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. And they cut out every light, and all of a sudden, me and Robert come out on the stage, and a big spotlight hit us. And Robert's in front of me. And all I can see is Robert's back. The people were going crazy, and we're going, and all of a sudden, Robert pulled a Houdini. He just disappeared. And I stopped. And when I stopped, the lights come up. Robert walked off the end of the stage in front of all those people. And the stage was about 16 feet high.
Yeah, I dropped 14, 15 feet.
Yeah, and you know, I was worried about it being hurt, but dude, let me tell you, when something's funny, it's funny.
Sure.
We're working with wrestler 1 and 2, which is Johnny Walker and Hercules Hernandez, and Johnny Walker was kayfabe man. He didn't serious. But when I got into the ring and I'm asking Robert if he's all right, Johnny Walker's got his head up under Hercules Hernandez's cape, and he's screaming. He's screaming, laughing. And needless to say, I'm glad Robert didn't get hurt. But, man, if you're in a situation when somebody else is laughing and you're laughing, dude, I'm telling you, you lose it. Now, here we are in the Barton Coliseum with about 10,000 people, and I can't, and I'm about to pee on myself, dude. I ain't lying. That was one of my.
That was crazy.
Yeah. So Robert, you took that 12-foot, 13-foot fall off the ramp, and you're fine. You hop right up and go at it, right to business.
No, actually, I was wearing my blue tights that night, and when I fell, the rail my leg cut the inside of my thigh, and one leg was red from blood, the other one was blue.
Yeah, but you tell you, buddy, we still gave the people their money's worth. He still went on, and we had the match.
Still performed.
Yeah. The next night too. Didn't miss no. Then we didn't take days off, dude. If he was hurt or not, that's the reason you had good talent. They would take care of you, and nobody knew it.
They probably thought Robert was debuting some new tie-dye with the red and blue tights.
Yeah, right.
Right. All right. Well, great story. Again, we usually lighten the mood a little bit about that heading into the last half of the interview. So appreciate you sharing that with us. I've never heard that story before. It's a great one. So moving along, again, keeping with your timeline, there would be a brief time where you went away from the NWA. You wind up in the CWA, taking a crack at the AWA titles against a team that any wrestling fan at that point, when they debuted, would have to immediately see them as a Rock and Roll Express knockoff. And that was Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. Then they were the Midnight Rockers. Wanted to get both of your takes first on what your initial thoughts were, even from a distance when you heard or saw the Midnight Rocker gimmick and saw Shawn and Marty work, and how similar the styles appeared to be. And then what were your thoughts on them as performers, even then early in their career in general, working with them?
Robert, you want to go or you want me to?
It don't matter. Well, Shawn and Marty, I know them both before they were Midnight Rockers. It's a little chip off of the Midnight and the Rock and Roll. They put the name together. But everybody knew we was original.
Well, to me, and this is like Robert said, Marty and Shawn were good friends of ours. And to me, when they done it, I took it as a compliment. Shawn Michaels was in Louisiana with us when we were down there, just a young kid. And understand me, Shawn, and he learned a lot from Robert and I. He rode with us a lot. We took our time with him. We did a lot in this business. We told him, and I believe that's what led him on. And even though they were that, they had the Midnight Rockers. They were a great tag team. A matter of fact, Robert and I had great matches with them. Enjoyed working with them. It was at AWA was get a little run there, but we didn't stay there because understand me, we're from the South, and it was cold up there. And,
sure is.
Yeah, buddy. And I told Vern, Vern wanted to sign us to a contract. I said, buddy, listen, call us back in about June, and we'll come back up here and talk about it. But right now, no, I'm not. Yeah. Oh, dude.
Hey, Ricky, I love you. I love you, announcer. But hey, guys, I got to go.
All right.
Keep it going. Y'all take care.
All right. Good. Thanks, Robert. Appreciate it. Ricky, you still there?
Yeah, man, I'm still here.
All right. Well, turn it back over to Steve here in a second for the next question. I just wanted to add to that. Many people have said, and many of our guests, Jim Cornette, we've had Manny Fernandez, several different workers that have worked alongside you guys both that have spoken of and brought up, when you said Shawn Michaels, that you were close to and everything. A lot of people speak very highly of his work in the ring, and many of our guests have attributed his work, not only with the Rockers, his singles work down the road, to yours, and to kind of say that you were somewhat of an original there. So a compliment from several of our guests your way.
Well, thank you guys, but understand me. I know Shawn real good, and I don't watch a lot of wrestling on TV, and I don't. But somebody the other day showed me a thing that I guess Steve Austin has a show. I don't know. But they had Shawn Michaels on it. And I was watching this, man, and it gave me cold chills. Steve Austin asked Shawn Michaels, he says, "Shawn, as you being in the WWE and known out through the world being the best baby face in this business," and Shawn Michaels stopped him and says, "No, I wasn't the best baby face in the business. Ricky Morton was." Buddy, what a compliment that was to me when he said that.
Wow. Yeah, he's not the only one that said that. I've actually heard an interview not too long ago with Ric Flair where they asked him about baby faces that he worked with and the biggest crowd reaction, and he said not Hogan. He said, not Savage. He said you. So
that's a great compliment, guys. And
sure.
And to me, and understand me too. And I give credit where credit's due. You had different areas in this business, different companies, and you meet a lot of world champions. You meet, Hulk Hogan and all these guys. But let me tell you guys, and it's me, my opinion, Ric Flair was the best world heavyweight champion this business has ever had. And I'm not saying that because of the thing. If you notice, Rick lived his gimmick. Rick was Rick. When Rick stepped in that ring, the people that paid to see him, buddy, he made sure you got your money's worth. You never seen Ric Flair unless it was on TV, go 5 or 10 minutes in the house shows, buddy. If he wasn't going an hour time limit, you went 59 minutes in the match. He always gave the people what they wanted. Still does. I was just with Rick the other night, and let me tell you, he's still Ric Flair, and to me, it was a great opportunity and a great pleasure just to have the opportunity to work with Rick and have a great run with him like we did. It was we had a pretty good long little feud there, and if you read his book, me and him went 17 straight hour matches. Now that was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. Then we did 2 on Sunday. But 17 of them straight in a row. And then when that was over, we went like 6 hour and a half matches until I met him in Charlotte. Where we had the thing in Charlotte where we did the gimmick in the cage. Where Rick broke my nose and they messed my face up. It was a great deal, buddy. We drew a lot of people with that angle, guys. I had a great time working with him too.
Absolutely, and we as fans really enjoyed watching you two guys compete in the ring. Let's talk a little bit about a time where Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson actually part ways. You joined the York Foundation, turned heel. I know that was kind of an interesting run for you, so take us through that time frame in your career, what it was like to part ways with Robert Gibson, and why there was never a really huge, highly promoted event where you two guys faced off in that one final blow-off of the rivalry.
Well, buddy, to speak the truth, like I said, I'm here at that time. It was a turn of hands when WCW was starting. You had people in the office like Bill Hurd that has about as much business being in our business as me flying the space shuttle. I guess I got a lot of heat with a lot of guys. Because then they brought people in our business that thought they knew everything about our business but didn't know nothing. And it's still like that today in some places. I'm not knocking, I'm telling the truth. You asked me a question, I'm going to answer it. You got to understand, right before the York Foundation, I was caught and I was lost in the shuffle because nobody was worried about, because that's when the money came in. That's when the contract started. That's when Time Warner, they thought they had deep pockets. They had people running our business. I didn't know what they were doing. I was lost in the shuffle. Robert got hurt, guys. He was out. He had his knee hurt, and during that time, they put me with the York Foundation. And then I did the little thing. And if you remember, when we did the York thing, Robert was hurt, and he was gone for about a year. He was gone for about a year, and it's like about 3 months into the York Foundation, they brought Robert in. I had one match with him on one of their pay-per-views out of Washington, D.C., which Robert and I had a great match. It was like in our times, guys, and, business changes. We got lost in the shuffle. Didn't like being the York Foundation. I was, and to tell you the truth, guys, for being a babyface so long, that it was hard for me to go out and try to work heel because I could not. And it's even like today. I don't know if you guys, Robert and I are still very active in this business.
Sure.
We're not.
Yeah.
And it's not because
November.
Yeah. And it's not. It's like, but we still go. But see, we're not like somebody that took off 10 or 15 years and try to come back because it's hard to do that. But when you wrestle every night, 3 or 4 nights a week, you still got your timing. You still got to stay in shape. I know I'm an older man, and I know Robert's older. We're older in this business, but we're still out there. We still do. Matter of fact, we still do real good business together. But at that time and era, what I'm getting back to, buddy, that's the reason. And understand me, if I just kept it dealt, even the Crockett thing could have kept going. WCW could have kept going, and not because of us. It's because if they had somebody in there that knew what they were doing, that ran our business. And I go ahead and Eric Bischoff, he's never been in the ring. He don't know what our business is about. Bill Hurd didn't know what our business was about. I mean, what do? You bring a tag team in called the Ding Dongs from Belleville. Please, guys,
Right.
please. And that was the era of that what you were talking about. And I hope I answered that question for you.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Because because it was there. Guys. I mean, we was just in Spartanburg a couple of weeks ago. Like I say, Flair was there too, and it was one of our big shows that were back in the Mid-Atlantic days. And guys, they turned away. I know they turned away 300 or 400 people that were standing outside in that big auditorium down in Spartanburg. And dude, I mean, if you ever seen the video of this, I know it's out there somewhere. It might be on one of my things, because I had to film it and show the people how the people were hollering rock and roll. It gave you chill bumps. I'm standing in the middle of the ring, and I look at Robert and say, my God, buddy, it's 1985 again. This is cool. I'm sure it is. And we gave the people a great match, but,
Yeah, well, again, you guys always get, and we've seen you. We saw you up in Winston-Salem when you guys teamed up. I've seen you up here. I mean,
that was another thing in Winston-Salem. Now you were up there. That was another. To me, I enjoyed being there, but being, and it's like I try to tell you guys, when you bring us in, let us have a good tag team match instead of bringing, instead of working with 12 different people, 18 different finishes and some of the guys don't want to be out there. I like being out there. You know what I'm saying? I like to give the people what they see. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying nothing bad, but if you just see me and Robert in the ring,
watch it for sure.
Sure. Yeah, thank you.
Well, yeah. Well, we I've seen you up here. I live right up the road from Clayton Fitness. I've seen you up here, and we'll be down at the show, helping out at the Ivan. Yeah, at the Ivan tournament. So we'll be looking forward to seeing you down there. We're well aware of the great work that you still do, man.
Hey, I want to tell everybody too, if you don't mind. This Saturday, Robert and I are going to be over in Fairview, North Carolina, over by Asheville. Okay. And matter of fact, a lot of guys that are out there, if you're interested, will be having a seminar starting at 3:00. You know, we can't turn you into WWE superstars, but the guys that are out there that are on the independent circuit, it's a lot of little things that Robert and I could teach you that they never even thought about. Not to be that, but to make you understand what our business is about, to make you understand what it is when you get into the ring. And guys, I'm going to be right up front with you. It's not about if my Hurricane Corona look good. It's about having a good match. And so we'll be over there Saturday if anybody's interested coming out.
Cool. Yeah, sure. Who better to learn from? Learn from, some of the greats of all time. But I'm sure you can teach the young guys a few tricks that they wouldn't even have thought of. Speaking of getting back to our last few questions here, speaking of the old territory days, sort of, one of the last, I guess what you could say was one of the last successful territories, again, we brought up Jim Cornette earlier, was when he took the reins and ran Smoky Mountain Wrestling, which you guys were involved with. You had actually, while you were there, you had a unique chance where you and Robert actually were on both a WCW and a WWF pay-per-view while working for Smoky Mountain. Just wanted to get some of your memories of working for Cornette and Smoky Mountain, your thoughts on that territory, and how did it ever come about that you guys wound up on the pay-per-views of those other companies?
Well, guys, that's when I tell you, I just walked out of WCW. Cornette started up Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Robert was already there. I got frustrated with WCW. They were signing contracts, and needless to say, Ricky Morton wasn't on that list. Want me to do things that where I worked so hard in this business to protect. In my heart, I just couldn't do stuff like that. But going into Smoky Mountain Wrestling, understand, Jimmy Cornette, buddy, has one of the greatest minds in the world for our business. Now, don't know if you guys know Jimmy personally or that, but Jimmy will say what is on his mind. He got a lot of heat from a lot of people about that, but that's what our business is about.
Yeah, he's joined us a couple times on the show.
And I got to say, he knew what he was doing, and coming into the Smoky Mountain territory. Matter of fact, which I live in Bristol, Tennessee, and this is right in the heart of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. It was real good and understanding me, knowing that when you go into a small territory like that, and all of a sudden, and see, that's accomplishing a lot. It's hard to start up a small territory and to let it run so long. We did a great feud with the Heavenly Bodies. To say, what it was, the same thing as the Midnight Express. You had Stan Lane and Tom Pritchard at first, until they brought, to Stan left, they brought Jimmy Del Rey in. And guys, let me tell you, I got to say this too. Stan Lane was living, I was in town, and they brought this redhead guy in here, one tooth knocked out. And they said, this guy here is going to take Stan Lane's place. He's going to be the new hell. And I'm thinking to myself, my God. And I've told Jimmy Del Rey this, too. I thought, wow, man, this guy here, how's he going to take Stan Lane's place? But, right when I got in the ring and locked up with him, and that's something that you can understand about the boys that know our business, like Locka. Right when I locked up with him, I knew that we were going to, but he took Stan Lane's place. Right then, I knew. That's hard to do, dude, when you have an established tag team like that. But working for Cornette was great, and understand me that they had a chance to go to WWE. Cornette was working with Vince a little bit on and off, so we carried the Smoky Mountain titles into WWE because Cornette was doing a thing. Because eventually, we were going to beat the Heavenly Bodies here. In a loser league pound for them to go to WWE. We got a great opportunity to work for Vince, so a couple of their pay-per-views. I had a couple of great matches because we had good guys to work with, and I was proud about that. It was an enjoyable time, but it was different as to watch Smoky Mountain grow, and how it did grow. It just didn't go bankrupt and shut down, I don't think. I think Cornette got a great opportunity to go to WWE. And because it's a hell of a job, dude, trying to run a territory, and I enjoyed it, man.
Absolutely. Jim Cornette, one of the best wrestling minds of all time, like you said. Going back, you had mentioned your WWF run there in '98 with a couple of the other guys with the NWA faction. But prior to that, back in your prime with Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson, the Rock and Roll Express in their prime, were you ever contacted by the World Wrestling Federation, by Vince McMahon, to ever come aboard and go up to work for New York in that territory, back when the tag team scene was very, very hot?
No, buddy, they didn't. We were in NWA. Matter of fact, at that time, in that era, even if they did contact us, I wasn't educated really much on the part about the money wise, because we thought we were making great money and we wasn't. but to understand me in my mind, we were set for what we did. You don't leave a territory when you're selling out every night, and to go into unexplored territories that you don't know what's going to happen to you, because guys, you got so many people up there. Like I was saying earlier, you get lost in the shuffle. Sure. They run out, and when it became with the writers and stuff, it's not about writing about that. It's just a different opportunity to keep their shows going. And glad to say that I didn't go. I have no regrets and nothing that I've done. I still love, and it's like right now, I'm almost 58 years old, dude. I'm in good shape as I was when I was 25 years old. Matter of fact, I believe I'm in better shape because I got older, took care of myself. But to understand me, I don't have no regrets. I love being where I was at. I love what I'm doing right now. And I still love this business. And I love helping, and it's not all about, but I've been through all that. The younger wrestlers this day, when they ask me for advice, and my advice is to them, and I'm not trying to be, again, somebody I'm not. My advice to them is just to make good decisions in life. One wrong decision can ruin everything for you. And this is my motto, too. They asked me about being a good baby face, and what can I do to be a good baby face? I said, well, when you think you're selling too long, sell longer. And if you think you're going too slow, go slower. That's my greatest advice to anybody out there about being a baby face.
Absolutely, absolutely. Before I touch on that, because it can kind of lead in there, Steve had just asked you about, now I know you said that you didn't, and again, I find that hard to believe that they wouldn't have contacted with how hot you were, but again, who could blame you? You're selling out the world in the NWA. But you guys did wind up there in '98 with Cornette as a manager for a little bit. Was that did that kind of branch off the Smoky Mountain thing, or was that, I know it was a few years later, it was just, how did that opportunity come about when you guys wound up with that NWA faction?
Well, to tell you the truth, when Smoky Mountain closed down, we were out here on the independent circuit. And understand me, when you're one of the boys in this business, you try to take care of each other, and that's what bothered me about nowadays, because we're out here and it seems like they forgot about us. But that was Jimmy Cornette. Jimmy Cornette got us a job. You understand me? Now, it wasn't guaranteed of what we were going to do and how we were going to be there, but at least we got a paycheck every week. And that's speaking the truth to you. That was Jimmy Cornette looking out after me and Robert. He got a little pull up in WWE, and he thought of us. We didn't really do nothing. It was the thing with the NWA, me, Robert, and Barry Windham, but it wasn't nothing. It was just something on underneath cards. And understand me, when you're in this business, buddy, that was a compliment from Cornette, because he didn't forget about us, and he gave us a little opportunity to make a little money. That was all.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you, he's been on our show twice now, and he definitely speaks very highly of you guys. So, that goes without saying.
Well, I speak the truth too. I don't do crap. And that's the reason I probably don't have a job now. I don't kiss nobody's butt. I stand up for what I think's right. I've learned a long time ago, if you don't stand up for something, you're a fall for anything. But Really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me, guys, on your show. Looking forward to doing it again.
Yeah, we'll do it again sometime, and we'll look forward to seeing you down at Clayton Fitness on the 29th of March at the Ivan Koloff Tag Team Tournament.
Looking forward to seeing you too, guys. Y'all have a wonderful night. Thank you for having me.
This is Tully Blanchard, one of the original Four Horsemen. You're listening to WGD Weekly with Steve and the Scum.
All right, well, there you have it. Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson from the Rock and Roll Express. I guess there's only one thing to say to you here, my friend, and that is, hey, Steve. Hey, Scum. Keep on rocking.
Some catchphrases never die, my man. Keep on rocking is right. Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, great guests. We appreciate their time tonight on WGD Weekly with Steve and the Scum. It was a little bit shorter than we normally get. And, you know, both those guys still very active in the wrestling business and busy guys and family men, too. So we wanted to be able to have a little bit of time to talk with them tonight, but understand that everybody's got family obligations. So we had to let them go a little bit earlier than we wanted to. I didn't get a chance to get those name associations in at the end. I wanted to hear what he had to say about old Captain Redneck. And I wonder if they ever worked with, I'm sure they did, maybe in Mid-South, did a little bit of time with Andre.
Seems like most people have an Andre story, even the guys that we weren't too sure of. So safe bet at some point Ricky and Robert were in the same building with Andre the Giant. I don't know for a fact, Steve, but I'd say it's a pretty safe bet that they were.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, man, they didn't disappoint with the 3 R's. That story that you got them to tell about falling off the stage, that was great, man. Good stuff.
Yeah, that was good stuff. That was. And again, I was real interested to hear Ricky's perspective, just with all of the praise that he gets over the years for being solo, for being the baby face that people point to when he talked about what an honor he felt it was when he heard Shawn Michaels on Steve Austin's podcast cut off Austin and say, no, wait, the greatest worker in that style was Ricky Morton. He was the greatest baby face. He was, the kind of in the mold that Shawn became when he was HBK. And again, even back in the days that we spoke with them about when they were the Midnight Rockers and then the Rockers, I mean, obviously Vern Gagne first, and then Vince wanted a team in that mold. And, the initial name, I remember getting the PWIs and stuff at that time when they were first coming out and thinking the Midnight Rockers, and they wore the same garb like the Rock and Roll Express. They had the Midnight in there combining kind of the two teams like we were just kind of reminded of there. I think Robert was who touched on saying, like, they wanted the Midnight and they wanted the Rock and Roll, but, there's always the originals. And, pretty cool to hear the take on that. Pretty cool to hear Ricky, a very humble guy, that he was honored to be spoke of in that way by a legend like Shawn Michaels and also Ric Flair and several other guys that have said that. So pretty cool stuff there.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Ric Flair. I was going to make mention. He actually said some very similar words on the same podcast on a different show, as a matter of fact. Ric Flair saying one of the best baby faces he ever worked against. Of course, Ricky Morton, great worker. There's a fake Twitter account, Ricky Morton Says, and some good stuff there. I did a little bit of research this week. Scum, I wanted to get into something that I wanted to kind of maybe reoccur on the show. Working with this WWE network, I think it's safe to say that's probably the best source of classic wrestling content you're going to find on the internet, unless you really want to troll YouTube for hours upon hours to find broken, busted video. What are you watching, man? What's going on in your world on the WWE network?
Well, again, time permitting, I always try to take advantage of it. Usually if I have a little time at the end of the day, I'll flip on and just flip through. I know I had spoken with you about watching some of the Raw replays, the couple that they had on there from 98, the classic edition, I believe it was from Fresno when Mike Tyson and Austin squared in the ring. And the rest of the card, I mean, some of the guys that you forget maybe were there or something, just great stuff. And, I also watched the latter one from 98 that they had when Stone Cold drove the Zamboni into the Joe Louis Arena. I mean, that's great stuff. You and I both agree. We love those Legends roundtables, even though I've seen them maybe when they first came out, they're always kind of refreshing to watch. I've watched some of the old school WWE Classics, the Maple Leaf Gardens and the Boston Gardens. I always like those because you never know who randomly was on a card in '84 back in MSG or somewhere. And after we spoke briefly with Ricky and Robert, I actually went and watched the Great American Bash where they squared off with one another, and I'm happy to report that the entire show was completely littered with WGD Weekly alum.
Like who, man?
Well, you had Ron Simmons was on there taking on a young Kevin Nash who was under the guise of Oz. And if I'm not mistaken, and maybe we'll have a chance to speak with him about this when he's up in Clayton on March 29th, I think the guy who's under the mask as the wizard that came out with Oz, I believe it's Kevin Sullivan getting a few cheap kicks in on Simmons. I mean, you can't tell. He has like a plastic mask, old person mask on. I believe it's Kevin Sullivan. Obviously, Ricky and Robert square off with one another on that pay-per-view. Another recent guests. Diamond Dallas Page comes out with his latest protege, being the Diamond Stud, Scott Hall. Brother. And a few other guys that were on there that have been on. Lex Luger was in the main event in a cage match to fill the vacant world title against Barry Windham, another of both of our all-time favorites. So, I mean, just throughout coming in, I wasn't that familiar with that event. You know, it was a long time ago, and just watching it match by match. Just a lot of guys that we've gotten to know and gotten to speak to here that it's always cool to go back and take a peek. I mean, I remember Lex when he was on way back when talking about, I think it was last September he joined us, when Lex was talking about how even though Flair wasn't there, what a great match that was. And it was a hell of a match. It was cool to see Luger finally get the world title and get that rub. And Barry Windham, it could have went either way. Wouldn't have been a bad decision to have Barry Windham carry the ball. But all in all, the Herd era, littered with lousy gimmicks.
The Herd era.
Once you get in the ring, you're Kevin Nash. Once you get in the ring, you're Scott Hall. Once you get in the ring, you're, Mark Miro or Johnny instead of Johnny B. Bad. So regardless of the gimmicks placed on these people, they still go like they always did,
Yeah, and that's testament to their ability to perform and put on a good show, a good match for everybody to watch. So hats off to them for getting labeled with shitty gimmicks basically, and still being able to go out and be a good performer. So I think that actually takes a little bit of extra. But Scum, I did a little bit of research this past week, and more anything retroflecting. I was always a huge fan of Ron Simmons, and so I went back and I found this match on a non-WWE network show. This is on Netflix, Falls Count Anywhere. It's hosted by Mick Foley. I think it's a 3-disc set. It's 3 episodes on Netflix. But I found Ron Simmons and Butch Reed, of course, Doom, against Arn Anderson and, again, Barry Windham in a street fight from I think it was maybe Spring Stampede, like 90 or something like that. I forget the pay-per-view that it was on, but it was an absolute brutal match. Really good stuff to watch. But I didn't do a lot of Rock and Roll Express viewing this week. I did though, as always, catch a little bit of Starrcade 83. I try to watch a little bit of that every week. I don't know why. It's one of my favorite wrestling cards of all time, I think. Piper Valentine and that dog collar match. It's worth watching about once every 10 to 15 days just to keep that violent streak in me alive.
Absolutely. Speaking of dog collar chain or Russian chain matches, as part of that bash that I watched, there was also Nikita and Sting in a chain match, which, again, you can't go wrong when you don't know what to expect, and that's what comes on.
Yeah. It's always great when you can flip on an old card and you see the one guy in the ring and you're like, oh, nice. And then you see his opponent, you're like, you hit a little jackpot. That's the best. Like when you really don't know who the opponent is and they come out and you're like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. This guy?
Sure. I always, you know me, I'm always a big fan of if it's something I hadn't seen in a while or maybe never had seen, I'll walk out of the room when it fires up and the announcers are going through the card, maybe grab a quick smoke, grab something to drink, come back in when that first bell rings. So that way I'm kind of watching it fresh, even though I might be 25 years old.
Yeah. A poor memory does wonders for when you want to watch old wrestling. But, I watched a little bit of Well, not really a little bit. I watched probably a year's worth of WWE pay-per-views, 1998 through the beginning in 99 this past week. And we're going to keep doing this, folks. So let us know what you're watching on the network at WGD Weekly on Twitter. You know our Facebook page. Give us a follow if you haven't already, or a like on Facebook. Thank you for listening. Rock and Roll Express this week. Big guest next week, too. And you mentioned him earlier in the show. He's going to be, of course, visiting us over at the Clayton Fitness Center on March 29th. Who do we got coming up next, brother?
Well, next week, Steve, WGD Weekly, once again, we'll head to the Extreme with the guy who's probably the face of Extreme Championship Wrestling. The guy who took tradition, took the NWA World Title, took Eastern Championship Wrestling, and flat out, by his own words, to the extreme, and that's the franchise. Shane Douglas, I believe a 3-time ECW World Champion, former United States Heavyweight Champion in the final run there of WCW. So Shane Douglas will be joining us next week, and again, just can't wait. Always outspoken, always a great interview, always someone who has a lot to say, and very well-spoken. Really looking forward to that. Always was a fan of Extreme Championship Wrestling. You know, the guy who kind of everyone would always say, it's all tables, it's all chairs, and it's people jumping out of the balconies, and staple guns, and blood, and guts. And, you know, Shane Douglas was kind of that guy. Yeah, when it was him and Sabu and, you know, Funk and those, yes, there were times where they spill to the floor and they spill into the crowd and they do this or that. But Shane Douglas was kind of a guy there that brought the legitimate world champion, you know, wrestler to ECW, and I think that's why he got the ball in it, man. He put his head down and ran right across the goal line with it, and hence the name, the franchise. Yeah,
well deserved too. And you know, he has been around the block, and you mentioned earlier, Scum, you know, spots with the WWF as the dean. We all know that, you know, that didn't go over very well. It certainly left a bad taste in his mouth. A long-standing rivalry and shoot rivalry, really, with the Nature Boy. Interesting comments, I'm sure, there. I also want to talk to him for sure about the spot in ECW when it first was, you know, born during its inception, where he threw down the NWA World Title, kind of where that whole feud with Ric Flair started as well. I really want to get his take on that. And, you know, Scum, we talked about this before on our show a million times. It's really why we have a show, is that you read stuff on the internet that you take it or leave it. It could be true. It may not be true. And once that we got a little bit of traction with our show and we were able to kind of see through some of the facade that's been posted on the internet and actually get some of the real stories from these performers, it's become kind of addicting now to try to debunk some of the internet rumors, along with actually hearing it from the people that were involved in the particular story as well.
Oh, absolutely. And who better to bring that than Shane Douglas? I mean, talk about your shoot interviews, talk about how popular it was. People, you know, who like to think, whether they are or they aren't in the business, in their terminology of a worked shoot.
Right.
Well, Shane Douglas, that moment, not only with the NWA World Title, but made a name for himself doing those promos, and everyone since has followed. So make no mistake about it, there was no one bringing it like that until Shane and ECW, and not that made it into his character somewhat, and not that took it to that level. So be interesting to see, you know, what Shane has to say. I mean, he had a great career. He trained with Dominic DeNucci, you know, spent some time training with Mick Foley. I know that coming up through the ranks, I've always been friends, and I'm sure to the day remain tight. You don't forget things like that. His early time, I mean, granted, once again, the Jim Herd era, saddled in the dynamic dudes along with Big Johnny Ace. You know, at the time he had a team alongside Ricky Steamboat, wore tag team gold for a while in that old WCW. Like you said, you know, the Dean Douglas character, maybe not the greatest of characters, but still, you know, had a cup of coffee up in WWE there. And then when he came back, you know, with the Revolution and Chris Benoit and Perry Saturn and Dean Malenko. I mean, to me, at that point in time when WCW could have went either direction, for whatever reason, they had that four-man faction, Douglas, the perfect mouthpiece, all four guys that could bring it, go, weren't over the hill at the time. And I don't know why they weren't utilized more, but, the revolution there in WCW. So just so many different spots with Shane to talk about throughout his career where he was right in the thick of things and always right in the middle of controversy, it seemed.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, a catalyst for controversy, Shane Douglas, and we'll get the true stories from him. And like you said, he's a great talker. He tells great stories, and that's what we want on our show always. Talk about classic pro wrestling, have some great guests on to tell some great stories. Well, we're running out of time this week, folks, but before we go, Scum, we teased this a little bit last week too. And again, I'm totally cracked out on this network. It's by far the stupidest $10 a month you're ever going to pay. I mean, we're if we could ever take back from Vince McMahon with all the money we've spent on merchandise, tickets, and pay-per-views over the years, he's giving it back to us now. So I really appreciate it. But anyway, what I wanted to get to, Scum, we got to do a little bit of homework, man. We got to watch some Shane Douglas stuff. So what better way to do that than hop on the network? What do you think? I know we talked about a couple of different things that he was in, a couple of different pay-per-views or events. And folks out there in Scum Nation, leave us your favorite Shane Douglas match or pay-per-view where he was a part of. Let us know what you liked about Shane Douglas, what you didn't like about Shane Douglas. The forum's yours, guys. It's not ours. WGD Weekly with Steve and the Scum on Facebook. Give us a piece of your mind. Before we go, two things. Scum, I'm literally getting in my car and driving. Is iTunes in Seattle? And where's TalkShoe located? If they're within the continental United States, I'm making a stop there too. Either way, folks, bear with us on iTunes. I have to find us a new RSS feed for iTunes to pick up. Now, it sounds easy on paper, but the difficult part of this is, and Scum, I haven't really mentioned this to you, so the difficult part of changing your RSS feed from where you're at now to a different server and then bring it in through iTunes is that I may have to change the whole name of the show on iTunes, which would mean you guys as subscribers may have to subscribe to a different channel. I don't want that to happen. I want to make our show as convenient as possible on our listeners, Scum. So I'm in a dilemma as to how to go forward with getting our show onto iTunes in a quick manner. Now, so far, everything's been on there except for Tully Blanchard and all the shows from Tully Blanchard till today. I'm tempted to try to just do a few things out of the box to see if I can maybe help the situation. But folks, I hear what you're saying out there. I read your messages on Facebook and Twitter, and I'll do my best to get back to you personally. I know one guy, I sent him a message today, Zach, if you're listening, thanks for hanging in there with us. And I got something special coming your way. So send me your email address. But Scum, we got a little bit of homework to do. I do anyway with this iTunes thing, but I want to let you know on the air and let all our listeners know we're not going to give up. We'll get you back up to date on iTunes. But until then, we're on YouTube. There's file converters out there online where you can copy the YouTube URL, the website address, into a different website and convert it into an MP3. There are websites like that out there. I know it's a little bit difficult, but if it's your only outlet, until we get things fixed with iTunes, please feel free to contact us if you have technical questions on how to do so. I will be happy to walk you through it. But either way, Scum, I'm out there. I just wanted to let everybody know I'm kind of the guy that helps with the iTunes, and I know you got a full plate of what you do for our show. So I just want to let our listeners know what I'm dealing with personally with the whole iTunes thing. At first I thought it was profanity, and we're really not a heavy, we don't swear a lot on our show. So I don't think it's that, the profanity thing. I don't know if it's content. I don't know if they haven't had a time to review the episodes that I've posted since, Scum. I'm pretty much at a loss, my man. I don't know what else to tell you. But the other thing I wanted to get in, and I'll turn the tables and I'll turn the floor over to you before we head out, is that I am going to watch, and we talked about this earlier, I think I'm going to watch ECW Hardcore Heaven 97. You suggested Sabu versus Terry Funk versus Shane Douglas. I think I'm on that, man. Is that what you're going to go with?
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to any of them. Just the suggestion that, we will do our homework. I think that Hardcore Heaven 97 is a great choice with Shane being the guest to go back one of his shining moments in his career. Certainly that three-way with Terry Funk and Sabu, not the first and not the last that those three guys danced, so to speak, in that nature over the ECW title. I look forward to watching that again, and we'll go with that unless, now again, it's up to you, the listeners. If we get some feedback, if you want to hit us up, WGD Weekly on Facebook or on Twitter at WGD Weekly, you want to throw out a specific Shane Douglas pay-per-view that you would like us to review, if you can get that out there, we'd be happy to turn the tables and watch, even if it was, in your house from 95 with Dean Douglas, if it was something from the dying days of WCW, those last couple of years when Shane was there, or any of the times that he was in ECW, if there's something you'd like to hear Steven the Scum's opinion on, we'll watch it. We'll do our homework for you. As of right now, I agree with you 100%, Steve. That Hardcore Heaven will be great. Look forward to sitting down. I haven't watched it in a long time. I remember it when it first came out, the ECW, one of their first pay-per-view offerings, and they were on fire, and they were, feeling it and gaining momentum. And it'd be a great choice. I agree with you 100% there. Getting back to the iTunes thing, I appreciate you doing all the hard work. I know that can be a pain sometimes when you don't really know what the deal is going on there with them and why things are lagging, and we appreciate the listeners sticking with us on that. And, as far as it not knowing if it was profanity or anything,
I'm still baffled, brother.
Shit, I don't think that we ever fucking use too much profanity on this goddamn program personally,
what
but I hope that's not what's holding us up, because if it is, it's fucking stupid.
I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, man.
Well,
either way,
I think we're just about out of fucking time this week here on WGD Weekly. We had Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson. Like to thank them for being here with us. Always a pleasure to sit down here for our weekly powwow, so to speak, Steve. Another fine performance by yourself, as usual. Keep adding to the legend here, week by week, of the latest sensation that's sweeping the wrestling radio nation. That's WGD Weekly. That's Steve and the Scum. We'll look forward to seeing Ricky Morton Saturday night, March 29th. Up here in Clayton, North Carolina, as part of the Ivan Koloff Tag Team Tournament. All of our listeners that are going to be out there, 2 to 4 that day, there's a Q&A and a seminar, which possibly some big news to be added to that in the next day or two, involving Kevin Sullivan and Shane Douglas. Come on out, learn some chops. Who better to learn a promo work, or any questions you have about in-ring work, or any questions in general. They'll be, as part of your admission, there'll be photo ops and autographs. Like Steve said earlier, if you haven't had enough with Shane and Kevin, Steve and the Scum will be there. Say hi, be more than happy to answer anything that you might want to ask us. I can't imagine what you would want to ask us, but if you'd like to, we'll be there too. So other than that, we appreciate you listening. We appreciate you hanging with the technical difficulties, and that's all I got for the week. I introed the show. All I can say is, Steve, myself, the Scum, we're going to keep rocking.
That's right, Scum Nation. I guess we're done for the week. We're out of time. So like the Scum said, we'll see you next week with Shane Douglas. And in the meantime, Scum, Steve, Scum Nation, keep on rocking.